McCarthy. 6 touches for Aaron Jones in the second half. We have a poor man's Kamara on our team. This guy should be getting 20 to 25 touches a game.
Always said this, and we have David Bakhtiari on our show.
My guy!
And he is saying that, we know we have to block longer than most other QBs that are out there because Rodgers is always improvising and doing his own thing. Well, that's why it doesn't look good because Rodgers is just running around like a chicken with a head cut off, and he.
That's my guy. That's my radio dad, Gary Ellerson.
There's some
Your dad's
radio dad?
Yeah.
Your dad's taking some criticism on the old Score North.
Quite a bit.
Hold on, there's another one. I gotta find this one.
I worked with him 4 hours a day for 10 years. I gave him plenty of crap myself.
To criticize the quarterback in Green Bay, but for what you're paying and the glory he's gotten versus the productivity you're getting now, it's not 2014 anymore.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You paid him a lot of money to be the leader of this team and to be a guy that was going to take this team to the next level. And granted, he shouldn't have to do it all by himself, but damn it, you got to come out better than that.
There's a reason. There's a reason why we're starting the show at Packer Vent Line. There's like 100 of these.
Today's really made me.
Not help you. I'd play the best backup that you have a chance with, and then going.
Well, really, the only backup. I mean, they got Boyle, but Deshaun Kaiser is their official backup.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's my favorite.
Yeah.
Just this
And then,
sense
like,
of
the sigh.
despair. Just
Yeah.
I guess.
That's a good point.
Today has really been a trip down memory lane for me in a lot of ways.
Those are your old coworkers.
Yeah, they are. Like I said, Gary Ellerson, I call him my radio dad. He always had a wise word for me in all the years that I worked for him, or a slap upside the head whenever I needed it.
Those guys have helped us program. Well, how many losses have the Packers had the last 3 or 4 years? We started doing Packer Vent Line probably 4 years ago on the Mackey and Judd show. And those guys have helped us program like 20 to 30 Monday or Tuesday radio shows.
Jonathan's right, though. That last call is the best one. Just the resignation in that man's voice. Yeah.
So I read this. The Bleacher Report story is like 10,000 words long because apparently we don't need to edit. But it was all just flowing drama.
But you know what?
Recapping McCarthy and Rodgers falling out.
Usually I read an article that long and I get done with it and I'm like, you could have made that so much shorter. You wasted a lot of my time right there. But then in this one, like every paragraph was juicier than the last. I was like, oh, good thing they kept this in.
So here's a couple just juicy nuggets from this Bleacher Report story detailing the falling out of Vikings rivals Aaron Rodgers and Mike McCarthy. And this is actually a recap via Deadspin that kind of sums up two of the juicier pieces, and then you guys feel free to throw in any more here. Because if you're a Vikings fan, I think you could go one way or the other. You could relish in this and say, wow, it's hilarious that Aaron Rodgers is that petty and Mike McCarthy is that stubborn, and the two of them couldn't make it work, and only, quote unquote, only, because the Vikings have none, but only won one Super Bowl in the Aaron Rodgers era.
Yeah.
But then the other side of it is, oh man, it's too bad you couldn't keep those guys together in this dysfunctional, although it's possible that Aaron Rodgers creates a dysfunctional relationship with the next coach too.
Right.
But according to Tyler Dunn is Ty Dunn is the author of the story. Okay. McCarthy's play calling was so bad that last season Rodgers changed a third of the plays in the huddle. The problem was that McCarthy kept calling the same plays he'd called during the 15-1 2011 season, despite the personnel being totally different now. As Dunn puts it, McCarthy believed it was his system that brought the team so much success and that it would work whether Rodgers was throwing to studs like Jordy Nelson and Greg Jennings or an assortment of unproven rookies. McCarthy was apparently so confident in his own system, he routinely missed team meetings in order to get a massage. About once a week, a meeting would start up and McCarthy was missing in action. Players weren't quite sure where he was. For example, an assistant coach would run the team's final prep on the Saturday before a game. Eventually, word leaked that McCarthy, the one calling plays on game day, was up in his office getting a massage during those meetings.
That's amazing.
One player had the same massage therapist, and she let it slip that McCarthy would sneak her up a back stairway to his office while the rest of the team prepared for that week's opponent.
By the way, violation of masseuse client privilege right there. Has to be.
I thought about that.
Has to be.
Yeah.
Quote,
and then I had lots more questions.
That was when guys were like, what the heck, says one longtime Packer. Everybody was like, really? Wow. Rodgers in particular was not thrilled that Mike McCarthy was getting massages upstairs.
Yeah, when I read that, I was like, what? Really? Like, that's borderline unbelievable. Like, Ty Dutton used to be on with us once a week when he worked for the Journal Sentinel, and I was down in Milwaukee. So I know Ty somewhat, and I know that he wouldn't be putting this out there unless it was true and it was fact-checked and it was verified in every way possible. He's as good as it gets when it comes to NFL reporters and writing stories like this. But if it wasn't Ty Dunn, if it was somebody who I didn't know, I'd be like, that can't be true. Like there's something about this isn't right.
And did you see the part two? There's a section in there about the moment where I guess Rodgers was done and it was the Patriots game when he purposely wouldn't run the plays that he was supposed to run and basically said, bleep it. Yeah. I'm going to sabotage McCarthy every chance I get.
Oh, that's amazing. Okay, so off of that, there's a similar anecdote in this recap that I'm looking at here. So as for Rodgers, Dunn's story paints him as a supremely petty teammate who browbeat young players and went out of his way to hold grudges. Former Packers running back Ryan Grant told Dunn that Rodgers disliked McCarthy from the very beginning of their time together because McCarthy had been on the 49ers coaching staff when they drafted Alex Smith ahead of Rodgers. Another source told Dunn that Rodgers put his young teammates in impossible situations by forcing them to disobey McCarthy's play calls during games. From the story, life sure wasn't fun for those rookie wide receivers. On-the-fly route changes put them in no-win situations. They didn't know whether to listen to their coaches or Rodgers. A source close to the team says Equanimous St. Brown became frustrated because as much as he wanted to follow McCarthy's play design, he also heard rumors of Rodgers freezing out teammates if they didn't do exactly what he demanded. So I'm just laughing as I read this. So he listened to Rodgers. On one play in New England, Rodgers told St. Brown to run a post route when the play called for a flag route. St. Brown ran the post that Rodgers wanted, and pressure forced Rodgers to throw the ball away toward the flag, leading his position coach to grill him on what he was doing. St. Brown told him he was improvising so he didn't upset Rodgers. Knowing what was up, McCarthy told the receivers to stick with the routes called, and this just continued on game after game after game, apparently.
You know what this is like? I don't know about you guys, but throughout my life, whether it was in school or in work, there are these dudes who they got it all. Like life is perfect. They're good looking. They got money. They got the nice car, nice house, nice wife, kids, whatever. They got it all. And it seems like they got life figured out and they're a little bit cocky about it. They like throwing it in your face. They like telling you, I'm going out on the pontoon this weekend with the family for 4th of July, you know?
Yeah.
That guy. And then you find out behind the scenes and that it wasn't really all that this guy was making it out to be, that it wasn't as perfect as it looked.
It's the I got a guy.
It looked like on the surface.
I got a guy.
And it makes you feel kind of good. It makes you feel kind of good about yourself and your own dysfunction, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, yeah.
It leads you down the path that is so important in life of realizing that sometimes people, and a lot of people who seem like they've got it all together, actually don't. And that's why you doubt things. But this also is the reason why in this day and age of pro sports, relationships only work for so long. The McCarthy Rodgers, and if Aaron didn't like Mike the day that Mike got that job, okay, or at some point in time, all right, guess what? They did pretty damn well as a duo for a long time. But this goes back to what we've talked about, Phil, a ton, which is the shelf life. Like, when does the shelf life end? Because relationships and egos like this can only coexist for so long. Belichick and Brady, what makes them so remarkable is I don't even think they like each other at this point that much, but it just continues to work. But this is the norm, where eventually it's like a marriage, and guess what? It just blows up.
I'm going to keep reading some of this. You guys react
Please
to this.
Do.
Dude, this is... The article is "What Happened in Green Bay" by Ty Dunn from Bleacher Report. He used to cover the Packers for the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. Quote, let's see, these are just like anonymous quotes here. A former teammate says, his number one job, and Mike always missed this boat, Mike McCarthy, is to manage Aaron Rodgers. That's your driver. That's your engine. Aaron's your driver for the whole team. Whether you want to or don't want to, you have to make sure that guy's happy. And at the end of the day, it doesn't sound like a fun job. If he's happy, you're winning, said an anonymous player. Your job isn't to go out there and throw and catch passes. Your job is to manage people and Aaron Rodgers. And so if Rodgers isn't Brady as a leader, the article says, McCarthy sure as hell never managed like Bill Belichick. Whereas Belichick despises the limelight and removes himself every way he can, this player says McCarthy loved anointing himself as a quarterback guru.
This was amazing. This was amazing.
The coach often bragged to players about his time with Joe Montana in Kansas City.
And the ellipses by Ty right there for the pause, the effect of the pause before he said in Kansas City. Just top-notch writing, Ty. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Quote from an anonymous player. He tried to bill himself as this quarterback master. Buddy, I just want to let you know, Joe Montana did a lot more before he was in Kansas City.
That's so great.
McCarthy felt he was the one who created this monster of an offense. A personnel man adds, quote, that was Mike McCarthy's big mistake. He wanted to be the guy. He wanted to be the reason, and he wasn't that good. Wow.
But where he had it going for him for a long time and probably believed his own press clippings was the fact that he transitioned from Favre to Aaron in 2008. And in 2008, Aaron was an ascending nice player.
Mm-hmm.
But that first game against so the opener in 2008, the first game post Favre, Rodgers was a quarterback who would pull the ball down and run. And he was athletically good enough to do that. But like his decision making at that time was fairly slow.
Yeah.
And so Aaron developed into this Hall of Fame quarterback under McCarthy. Now it's to Aaron's credit that he became that quarterback, but I think Mike saw that and Mike thought, look how good I am. Yeah, I've taken this kid who couldn't do a thing. So again, though, it's up to the organization to be smart enough to realize when the relationship between star quarterback and coach has reached its zenith and it's just going to descend. And it's up to the team to be smart enough to say, I think we have to seriously look at a change here because of the fact that it's starting to dissolve.
You know, so I heard a quote one time. I'd forget the origins of it, but it makes 100% sense in this case. It's never the work that sinks a team or that leads a team to its demise. It's the drama of the people. It's like it's never, oh man, we're all washed up and the work's too hard. It's egos. And it's people wanting credit, and it's people not being able to get along and infighting, right? McCarthy he could still coach for another 10 years, right? Aaron Rodgers can play in the NFL for another 5 or 10 years, but they hated each other so much, and egos were involved so much that this thing blows up with them only having, like, if you could play out Rodgers' career again, he should have at least 2 or 3 Super Bowls right now.
See, and I never go down that road. It's way too hard to win Super Bowls, and there are way too many things that are out of your hands that need to go your way to win a Super Bowl. One issue I do take with Tyler Dunn in this article is he did the same thing that you just did, which is they make it seem like almost a foregone conclusion that if not for the problems that he points out in this article, that Aaron Rodgers would have 6 rings right now. Well, and I can't go down that road. He'd have a better chance at winning those Super Bowls, but I don't think you can ever definitely say so-and-so would have had more rings.
But is it fair to say, so forget about the Super Bowl rings argument for a second, because it's possible they run into Tom Brady and Bill Belichick 5 times and they get beat all 5 times.
Yeah.
But is it more likely, and I know what I think about this answer, that if there is a coach in the universe that would be a better fit for Rodgers, and maybe there's not many, maybe Rodgers in his mind thinks that he's just the smartest guy in every room, and
he
it doesn't
should
matter.
be the head coach.
Yep.
Right.
But if there is someone that could have come in and meshed with him and pushed the right buttons, that there would have been less drama, and therefore there would have been a better chance for them to win big.
Yes.
Right.
If it was a less dysfunctional situation, it certainly improves the odds of them winning more Super Bowls.
But this goes back to what we discussed before on Purple Daily, which is ultimately the smartest thing that the Packers could have done was understood when Ted Thompson was declining and gotten rid of McCarthy and Thompson. Because if you want to talk about what would have put the Packers in a prime position, the best position possible after the first Super Bowl, let's say to go to 2 more or 3 more, it was what? It was turn over Ted's philosophy, because his drafting philosophy, which had worked, stopped.
Mm-hmm.
He lost his fastball for sure. And the Packers' inability to put a premium on defense at all became a major problem. So I think if we're going to talk about going back and saying what would have made the Packers as successful as possible, it really starts with the decision that they should have made to get rid of Ted and then allow Ted's successor to pick the coach and take the team in that direction.
Okay, there's some dudes went on the record. Like Jermichael Finley went on the record in this story.
It's not the first time Jermichael Finley
No,
has gone on the
I was going to say
Greg
it's the least surprising thing of the story.
And Greg Jennings has gone on the record before.
Jermichael Finley went on the record critical, I think it was, of Aaron Rodgers while he was a player, and Rob Reichel printed it, and then Jermichael Finley almost killed Rob Reichel and said, "You're trying to cost me money." It's like, I wrote literally what you said to me.
So here's another excerpt. Maybe Rodgers' ability to sling a football on a rope from every angle on Sundays masked McCarthy's flaws, but a faction of people who have spent time around Rodgers and the Packers believe you must look beyond the stats and highlights and understand Rodgers is also responsible for the Packers' plummet to mediocrity, and then they list the reasons why. Self-entitled. He'll throw you in the doghouse. The moment Rodgers inked his new contract, the one that could earn him up to $180 million, Jermichael Finley knew a storm was brewing because Finley, Rodgers' #1 tight end for 4.5 years, remembers the entitlement his quarterback had even as a first-year starter. Quote, when he was broke as bleep. You give a man $200 million, he's the GM, he's the organization, he's the quarterback, he's the head coach. He has a sense of entitlement already, and then you give him $200 million, you make him one of the highest-paid quarterbacks in history. It comes with the territory, man. I think Rodgers, man-to-man, needs to take a little bit more blame.
Woof. There was a lot of that, of Aaron Rodgers never thinking it was Aaron Rodgers' fault. And Mike McCarthy was the same way. They both thought if things went wrong, in Rodgers' case, it was either a bad play call by Mike McCarthy or a receiver ran the wrong route or had a bad read or dropped the pass or whatever the case might be. And with Mike McCarthy, when he failed to adapt and evolve and his plays and his overall offensive system and philosophy wasn't working anymore, he never said, well, maybe I need to adapt and evolve. Instead, he said, well, I don't have the players. Aaron's changing the plays out on the field. It was never, they both had that quality of them of it was never my fault. It was always somebody else, never my fault.
The last time a quarterback was held accountable in Green Bay, Ramie, my guess is mid-90s, Favre, Holmgren, right?
Probably.
Because Favre was, by the time I covered him in 2003 and 4 there, nothing was his fault again. And Mike Sherman did nothing to stop that. So you basically have not had a quarterback in that city take responsibility for his mistakes since circa 1995.
But some of that you want.
Yes.
When a quarterback gets a contract like that,
I agree.
He when he signed this last contract, this last offseason, he called it now a partnership between himself and the Green Bay Packers because he will own as much of the success and failure of this franchise in the public eyes as the organization itself will. So he should want some ownership of that blame or of that credit. He should want some ownership of the offense and the system and the plays that are called, but there's a fine line where you step over and now you're doing more harm than you are good when you have that attitude and feel those entitlements.
That's also tough to coach as well.
Yep, absolutely.
Go, Mac, go! Hurt him again. Yeah. And then also Aaron Rodgers and his obstinance and stubbornness not to throw the damn checkdowns time and again throughout this game cost them the game and cost them the season. $170 million paperweight. No, it's not
Bill.
worth it.
Stop, Bill. Come on, man.
No.
Come on, Bill.
Nope.
Bring it back.
Nope.
Come on, Bill. Come on,
Bring
Bill.
it back.
Come on,
Bill, no, come back. Bill, come back.
No, Bill.
No, Bill.
No, come on, Bill.
Dude, come on now.
The paperweight comment was
I love how
outstanding.
Like Gary Ellerson's in that room in the first 10 seconds. He's like, yeah, Bill, yeah. And then it's like, no, Bill.
Bill.
Don't do that. No,
Bill, dude, no, come back. Bill, come back.
Too far, Bill. Bring it back.
Oh, my God.
Man.